up a real live stream with Sophie Spinelle, who is the founder of Shameless Photography and, again, an artist in her own right. And I've been doing a series of interviews that I'm calling Let's Talk About Money. So I'm bringing, you know, the glamorous, the brilliant, the super hardworking Sophie up just to talk a little bit about her experiences as a small business owner and, you know, as a thoughtful person. So we were having a great conversation earlier today, and I just want to start by thanking you for being willing to interview and talk about this stuff.
It's an honor.
Oh yeah. But the thing I think I want to start with is maybe you can actually frame for people what it was like to start Shameless Photography, or anything about, you know, transitioning from the job that you had to being a small business owner.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I actually worked a completely different job before I started Shameless. I was working in policy as a fundraiser, and I was in that job for 5 years, and I really honestly thought it was going to be my career for the rest of my life. It was stable, and I was making more money in my salary than anybody in my immediate family ever had, and that was one version of success. But eventually I decided to take a huge leap, and that was partially inspired by you and other friends we had in our lives and our circles, to try and find what I really loved doing. I had been carefully saving for many, many years at the time when I decided to take that leap. So it wasn't as scary for me as I think it would be for someone who still had a lot of debts, which most people do, I think. But I was actually, I was in a good position to do it because of many, many years of deciding that money is possibility, and if I don't buy this particular thing at this particular time, I'm going to have more freedom later on. When I started Shameless, I didn't realize I was starting a business. So I actually really related to a lot of what you were just saying, am I doing this? Toss! I started doing a few shoots, and I remember vividly that one of my test models posted on Facebook one of her images from the shoot we'd done, and then it had a caption underneath, "This is a photo by Sophie Spinelle, who is starting a pinup photography business." I remember reading that caption and thinking, oh my God, am I starting a business? Am I starting a business? Oh, what does that even mean? You know, I didn't know anybody who had done it that formally, and I didn't have a business plan, and I just didn't know what to do. But I did start a bank account, and I got an EIN, and that helped simplify things from the very beginning, honestly, just those simple steps, because you really do want to take advantage of every deduction. And in my case, with this type of business, I was buying wardrobe, makeup, all sorts of things that were necessary for the business. And if I'd been trying to go through that afterwards and separate my makeup and wardrobe from the businesses, it would have been hellish. And I probably wouldn't have taken the deductions because I would have been afraid of audits, which I have friends who get audited all the time. So better to be careful.
Have the receipts, do the work, and then you know what? No, I personally don't want to be audited, but I fear no audit because I am extremely anal and type A.
Yeah. So that's sort of the genesis of the thing.
Yeah, and what you just said now made me think about something that you'd said earlier, which is the comment you made about grit, about actually deciding that, you know, success and the possibility for success in a small business, whether it's full-time or your side hustle, is finding something that you really want to go through the ringer with.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So as I was saying just now, I was working in fundraising before I started Shameless. And in that job, I had to write a lot of grant proposals. And so the first thing I did when I quit my job was that I wrote a grant proposal to myself, because I had these savings and I wanted to be very serious and diligent about how I spent them. And so I wrote a grant proposal to myself, and I said, you know, here's my mission statement. I believe that work can be joyful and nourishing every day. and that you can do something good in the world with your time. And I have not found the job that does this for me yet. I'm going to go out and do all of these different things to try and find my passion. And it was everything. It was like writing. I did that whole conflict resolution program in the midst of that. You know, all of that was part of the same goal of trying to find what would be the most passionate and most fulfilling work for me. And Shameless was one idea on a list of many ideas. But when I first started, and it really, you know, I had done art of various sorts before, and I had studied painting in college, but I hadn't done photography when I started. And it just grabbed me by the collar, and I fell in love so hard. And it was a level of passion that made working absolutely effortless. And I had never experienced that before. I'd always been an extremely hard worker and very conscientious, but I was often doing things I didn't really care about. And I would work really hard on it and finish what my boss had told me to do. And then I would surreptitiously be surfing the internet. And I thought I was kind of lazy. I was ashamed, you know? And it wasn't until I found something that I was truly passionate about that I realized how, just how much farther you can go and how much deeper you can go if you're doing something you really care about. And that's this concept of grit, which listen to Radio Lab. There's a program about it recently. Maybe it was Freakonomics, I'm not sure. But they were talking about this research that's been done recently about how it's really not just about diligence. You know, you can't get all the way just by forcing yourself to do things. You actually have to find something that gives you that flow.
Totally. And that was the word that was coming to mind for me, honestly. Like, it goes back to what I said at the beginning of this call, where it's like starting to work with your money is energetically saying that you're going to have a future. And that, you know, and I'm an old punk. Like, I never thought that I would be sitting with anyone talking about energetic money, blah, blah, blah. But I actually, from talking to a lot of people, doing a lot of reading and my own experiences, have found that, you know, this idea of grit, or this idea of something that is so joyful to say yes to, makes it easier to accept, right? Like money for the work, and makes it easier to actually like find the clients, right? Like flow actually starts to enter.
Right.
And it's an energetic, I mean, I think part of it is coming from a place of abundance, right? And like when your interest in doing something is abundant, and your excitement is abundant, and you're, you know, and you're not necessarily marketing, you're actually just telling an awesome story you're totally stoked about. You know, like people try to get marketing degrees to like replicate this, like this, like
what comes naturally
what
in
can,
those cases.
what can come naturally, which is like, you know, like truly being stoked on what you're doing. Yeah.
And I think that when I meet people, a lot of times they I mean, people respond this way. They say, "Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I should be a pinup photographer." And I always say, maybe, or but also there's like a level of authenticity in it where I think there's actually, it's just like falling in love. You can be paired with work that nourishes you and fulfills you and has that flow. And the more authentic your connection with it is, and the more you it is, the better it's going to be, and the easier marketing is going to be, and the more your clients are going to feel that, you know, whatever it is that you're doing, because it's easy enough to follow someone else's path, but if you create something that's truly wholly you, no one else can replicate it, and you're going to be that person that does that thing with their whole heart and soul.
Yeah, and that's something I've just always admired about like watching you build your business and build your path forward, is that I've just watched you do it like from this place of following what you're so excited and passionate about, and building this journey because you really want to be building it. I love it. And so another question, like on this journey, right? Like you've been doing Shameless for about 7-8 years now?
Yeah, 7.5 years, perfect.
Yeah, amazing. So in terms of like thinking about the money and the financial management part of it, is there something that you over this time have learned or tested or did that you would do differently? Like what's like one big takeaway that if you were going to say, yeah, if I could do it again, I might turn this wheel?
I think I probably would have done a business plan earlier. Shameless took off like a rocket in the beginning, and I didn't feel that I needed to do any very careful planning. Like, this is how I'm going to capitalize on this moment. We used to have a wait list of 500 people, and I was just like, it's going to go on like this forever. And I didn't actually make the preparations that I needed to capture the business when it was at its height, and to respond in the most appropriate ways. I just didn't have the training, and I hadn't really prepared. But I think, all of those things are, it's just ways that you learn to be more forward thinking instead of more responsive, which I think is really, everyone goes through that, whether it's a business or a nonprofit or whatnot.
Totally. That like deep planning ahead.
Yeah.
And what's something that you've done that you would definitely do again, or you would try to replicate in this, if you had another business, or that you would like, that you learned doing the business that you put into your personal life? Like, is there anything, things like that?
I feel like there are a whole bunch of things. I think one, definitely the savings thing, I think is huge. And because I'm from a family of working artists who drilled that into me early on, I feel like I really started with an advantage that I always had the sense that money was possibility and I just shouldn't squander it. And honestly, I don't really like buying things. I don't have like a natural, I know some people like to go shopping and it feels really good. I don't like to go shopping. It stresses me out because I know that I'm trading in, that dress. Oh, that's really pretty. I'm trading in that $125 that could have been spent on anything else in the world. And that feeling brings me anxiety. I would do that anxiety all over again because of what the freedom that it has afforded me. But I actually think the biggest thing that I love, that I've learned and that I would do all over again is learning that investing in the people around me is one of the great blessings of being a business owner, that getting to have all of these incredible, creative, amazing people with their own life stories become part of your business, and to be able to provide them with resources that are pure possibility in their lives, that feels so empowering to me. And it means more to me, honestly, than my own profit by a long shot. So I pay myself less than I pay the other people I work with, and I feel super, super good about that. I wouldn't want it to be any other way. I'd be super stoked if that was happening with more bigger business owners, but I guess the urge for exploitation in order to make profit is deeply rooted in a lot of people's business models, but for me it's not, and that has felt really good.
And that actually leads me like directly into the other question that I wanted to ask you, which is, when we are thinking systemically and we are thinking, like as whole picture as possible, like here we are, like in a very imbalanced society, right? And, yet with resources, enough resources that, both you and I, right? Like, we're small business owners, we're able to like do the work that we do work that we're excited about, and work that allows us to look around us and go, there's some really unfair, imbalanced things. Like with Shameless, I think you have a really interesting take where you do empowerment work and like feminist pinup photography, which is just like the greatest, and I wonder how thinking about these like larger systems and larger structures, how that's grown for you, or like how you might think about your work as related to like bigger systemic change, or like what systemic change would you also like to see in the world?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Well, I always thought of Shameless as an anti-capitalist project in a very direct way, honestly, because I think imagery and portraiture in particular, it's a tool that's been used very effectively by capitalism. Amazingly skilled photographers create astoundingly beautiful images of certain women, models or actresses or other famous people. And those images are some people would say manipulated. I would say they are creatively endowed, impossibly so, like beyond the point of reality. And then those impossible fantasy images are used against people to make them feel inadequate, to make them feel that their inadequacies require that they purchase certain products, to change their hair, to change their skin, to change any number of things, change the size and shape and quality of their bodies. All of this is, shame is profitable, is what it comes down to. And I wanted to provide an antidote to that. I wanted people to walk into the studio and feel that through folk art, through a bunch of women getting together in a room, we could create those fantasy images. We could be that fantasy and choose to do it together anytime we wanted to. And pinup was just a vehicle, and it probably won't be the vehicle for Shameless forever. Any sort of imagery that helps unlock people and show them that they are valuable and that they never needed to listen to that imagery to begin with. That's what I want. I think the hardest part of a business model like that is then you have to convince people to invest in themselves and to invest what to them feels like a lot of money, even though it really isn't, for the amount of work that's going into it, for there being a hairstylist and a makeup artist and a photographer and retouchers and the whole thing, like, is actually very, very reasonably priced. But for a woman, and I know this, to look at that price and say, oh my God, am I going to spend $500 on myself? I can't do that. So the change I would like to see is one that moves away from, the capitalist framework where it's, you as the consumer are trying to get the lowest price for everything possible, toward a theory of investment. Every dollar that I spend is an investment in the world that I want to see. And if I want to see a world where I'm empowered, what should I buy? If I want to empower other local people, what should I buy? Especially when you do have some disposable income, which many people don't, but especially when you do, you have a choice between, buying that perfect piece of furniture or, something lovely, I'm sure, but you can do it in a way that is extremely world affirming and person affirming, or not.
And our money choices matter, right? Which is a understatement. But I think that when we can even break it down to be that simple, right? Like, our money choices, again, like, if money is a type of connection to something, like when we give money to something, we're like connecting to it. We're saying this thing's important, right? And I want to support what's behind this thing. And I think,
absolutely,
especially as some very interesting people are doing work to start to unpack like what's behind some of the big businesses that we support, or the big banks that our money is in, or the chain stores that our money is going to, where, actually realizing that like our money has like a life cycle after us, right? And when we do invest in small businesses, right, like that life cycle actually is doing more positive support work, right? And, and I really love this idea of like choosing to see money as an investment, right? Like, because that comes back to this idea of like money as opportunity, right? And we're back. Sophie just commented that YouTube thought that we were doing too many anti-capitalist things and saying too much against capitalism, and we got taken down, which happens.
Yeah, that's real.
But no, I was just thinking that there's this like, it can be overwhelming, right? When you actually pause to say, oh, my money is like literally literally saying yes to all these things, right? Which to me, and I was raised to be a money saver. I've always been a big I've just always saved at least 10% of my income. Like even when my income was super low, like when I was on unemployment, I saved 10% of my money.
Absolutely.
Like just saving it. And I think that to me, and something that I sort of talk about with people I work with, is this idea that like, we also have to invest in ourselves, and we have to invest in our own potential possibilities for the future, you know. And for some people that's just starting with like, oh, instead of buying this latte, I'm going to make sure that I have an emergency fund, right? For, you know, just like and something like a great way that I've heard an emergency fund described was as a feminist fuck off fund.
Oh,
yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, the idea being that if you're working a job where like your boss is harassing you or something, or if you're like living with a partner and that is like, and something unsafe is going on, that you actually have have opportunity because you have option, right? And
absolutely,
like, you know, and I'm someone who, even when I was making like 24, 25 grand a year, at least always had like 2 months of my expenses put aside, because for me, I didn't know, right?
Absolutely.
And I think, and again, for myself, I'm someone who like doesn't necessarily have a family net. So I was like, well, gee, this is actually extra important for me to make sure. But I think it's important for everyone because it is that like that self-determination and that choice, right?
For sure.
You know, and even if you do have resources, like to be able to make your own choices about it, right? Or even if you do have access to a net, to be able to like have your own resources that you can make your own choices, like that's self-determination.
Absolutely.
Right. And again, in our society, like we're stuck in capitalism. It is unfortunately linked to, can we collect some resources?
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are there any, I'm going to pull up the chat screen to see if anyone has chatted any questions. But in the meantime, Sophie, is there anything else you want to share? Any other, like, you know, thinking about the way you think about money that you want us to know about?
Whoever is out there thinking about starting a small business, or if you already have a small business that you haven't been calling a small business, I hope it goes spectacularly well. I hope that you have found your passion, and don't be daunted, because I'm super DIY and I don't actually do all of the wonderful organized things necessarily that are recommended, and I've still been able to get by. The important thing is just that you're doing the best you can at the moment that you're doing it. But they're really, you know, even if you get, I just got a bill back from the IRS because I mispaid some of my payroll taxes, and I had that feeling of, you know, like my stomach dropping, like I'm bad person. I have miscalculated a number, and then I thought,
yeah,
it happens.
Yeah, there will be so many surprises and bumps on the road in having a small business.
Absolutely.
And you learn from all of them. That's it.
Exactly.
Even if you've like forgotten to put aside money for taxes for a whole year, like guess what? You make a payment plan with the IRS.
Yes.
Right? Like you call them and say, hey, look, I don't have it. but I'm going to pay you. Here's what we're going to do. Right? Like there's ways through all of these things.
It's true.
Yeah.
And I think the key is just keeping your eye on like what could really, really be tricky. Like for me, almost from the very beginning, I got business insurance because pinup photography is really physically demanding for your clients. And I knew it was possible somebody would throw out their back during a shoot or worse. And I just didn't want to be liable for that. So, you know, just thinking about like, what is your business? What are the real risks? And then planning for that. It just means you're going to have less to stay up about at night, worrying.
Totally. Which is more time to do the thing you love, be that your business, be that your art, be that going out into the world and living life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Cool. I see a question on our chat. So what I see is someone saying, if you're an artist who files a Schedule C, would you suggest getting the EIN? Yeah, absolutely. I would suggest the EIN to absolutely everybody. If you are getting money that doesn't come with a like a W-2, right? I just think it cleans everything up, and it allows you, again, when you're invoicing for things, when you are if you're invoicing or filling out a W-9, you don't have to share your private social security number, right? So it's a privacy thing, and it just like allows you to do so many other things, like open a business bank account, like open like a self-employed plan IRA, right? Like once you have that EIN, it kind of unlocks all the formal things that you can do as a sole proprietor, e.g. a individual small business. And it's free, and it takes 3 minutes. I will even send the link out on this YouTube later, and to anyone who registered ahead of time. Do it.
I have 2 of them. I love them.
Totally. Yeah, and I see another chat, like, would you recommend like having a separate bank account? Yes.
Absolutely.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Run, don't walk.
Yeah. It just simplifies things so much. And I try to never pay for anything with cash if I can help it, because I want it to be on my debit card for that account. I actually have a credit card and a debit card that are just for the business. And I don't know how I would keep track of everything otherwise. The times when I buy things with cash, it's just like, oh no, now I need to remember the cash receipts. Whereas the other stuff is just all in one place. It's all ready to go for whatever form of analysis you're going to do after the fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the only things that I pay for through my personal that I then also write off on my business are my cell phone and my utilities, because I only write off a small portion of them for my businesses.
See, I don't do that. And I should.
You can.
And, I should. It's just more, I actually do have anxiety about audits. So any of those trigger things, I just don't do it. Mm-hmm. Like I actually work here a lot, but I don't write off any of the expenses for here. But don't listen to me. I'm just paranoid.
And for me, like I write off like 15% of my apartment as a business space, because I have like 2 spaces in my apartment, one where I store things for one of my businesses, one where I like actually have my desk and my files and my, and I see clients at my apartment,
that makes sense.
So it really is a space where I do business.
Yeah.
And my accountant has always advised that that's fine.
Yeah. Accountants will say, as long as it's a designated space and nothing else is happening there, you're totally fine. The tricky thing is multi-use spaces. Like if many things are going on in one space, like for instance, my accountant who actually works for the IRS as well. So he's like,
that's the kind of accountant you want, honestly.
He's really, really good. And he was saying that one of his clients had a dog dish in her office, her home office. And so they said it couldn't count because the dog dish implied that it was a living space, which I think that's ludicrous. And it depends which IRS person you have and whether they actually visit your home and everything else. Because most people I know, they're not doing very thorough audits. But the home office in particular is a huge trigger. They're really strict about it.
Yeah. I mean, my accountant, and I wonder if it's like space dependent,
it could
right?
be.
Like city dependent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because my accountant was like, oh, they used to do home visits, but that's like much less
now. They don't do it anymore.
But here's the other thing he told me that I think is very interesting. He's like, look, if you're making like 40, 50 grand a year, you're filing Schedule C's, you run part of your business out of your home, you write some of that off. Really, it's about if you have 40, 50 grand a year in total income, like you are small potatoes to the IRS.
Right.
They are getting more stringent, right? And again, like, go by the books, keep all your receipts.
Yeah.
And you're small potatoes. You're on the much less likely side.
Right.
Especially if you're like crossing your T's, dotting your I's, having an accountant, right?
Yeah.
Like low likelihood. But he said that people who run their own businesses and make 200 grand a year or more, 1 in 4 get audited. Right. So there's like an asymptotical relationship in there to increasing your income and potential of audit.
Cool. Well, then I'm totally fine.
just things to know. But, you know,
Yeah.
but if you put good practices into place now,
Yeah.
right, and
then it won't matter when you're making 200K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're like, look, I've dotted my I's and crossed my T's.
Yeah.
Like, here it is. Here's all of it.
Right. That's, I think that really is the key. If you're feeling anxious about an audit, then you know there are some things you should probably deal with that would be tricky in an audit. So just deal with all those things, and then you won't feel anxious about the audit anymore.
Yeah.
Note to self.
Note to self, right? All right. Any other questions on the chat? I don't see any. I love talking about small business. I love talking about like being visionary with the businesses that we can have and the ways that we can support ourselves. And I'm just so in admiration of your work. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so in admiration of your work. And
Thank
I always
you.
have been. You really were one of the main inspirations for me taking that leap.
I love it.
It's the truth.
Oh, artist friends forever.
Definitely.
All right, good people who are on the internet and otherwise. I'm going to give you a little tiny bit more slides, and then we're going to get out of here. So again, this was Sophie Spinelle. She's the founder of Shameless Photography. Please go look them up. Please go check out the beautiful, beautiful, amazing images that Sophie shares. Just in review and closing, so this has been an introduction to the Fearless Money Management class. And so this is a class that I will teach online and in person. And what's in the class is there's a whole bunch of tools to work through your history and fears and ways of relating to money. There's also skills for managing your income, both if you get W-2 income or freelancer income. There's a whole bunch of ways that we can deal with credit and debts. And then there's what I call adulting pro tips. So that's some things about our taxes, about negotiating salaries, about setting freelance rates. So there's like a whole multi-modules on that. And then there's some tips on hacking capitalism, right? So acknowledging that it's a game, so how to play it. And so some of that is going to be about mindful investing, about thinking about how we're going to put our resources places, making our own sort of like giving and investment plans that align with our ethics. And that is what I have for you. So again, this has been an introduction, one of my series of introduction classes to Fearless Money Management. I'm Hadassah Damian. My blog is ridefreefearlessmoney.com. Check it out. Read up, get tons of free resources, and I will hope to see you the next time around. So thank you very much.